Hey everyone, it's time for Coffee with Compassion. Hey, it's Pastor Jason. Thank you so much for being a part today. I hope you're having an awesome start to your day. If you have a prayer request, please go to the comments section and put that request down there. I would love to pray for you today and believe with you. You know, at Compassion Church, we've been going through our new series. It's called The Broken Gospel. And when we look at it, we're discovering that maybe culturally in our church, the church as a whole, culturally in our families, or even some of us as individuals, we're finding that the gospel is not as effective as we're taught or as we would believe. And you have to ask the question, why? Is the gospel broken, or is it us? And I think, many times we look at this awesome picture of the gospel. We go from Adam and Eve and through the Old Testament where people are learning from God and being changed by him to the advent of Jesus, where God reveals himself through his son and he goes to a cross and dies for us. And in glorious resurrection redeems us. We love the story. And then we go through the rest and we see that God has a future planned. And we say, oh, this is such an awesome story. But with our religious mindset, sometimes we look at it and see it as the beautiful story that it is. And we forget that it's a personal note to us. The Bible is a personal love letter to us, revealing God to us as individuals. The Bible was sent for you to see the Father, to see God, and to know him. And sometimes we forget that, and that's where sometimes maybe it loses its effectiveness. When we look at the gospel, we see that Adam and Eve in the beginning had innocence and honor, and they exchanged that. They exchanged it when they sinned for guilt and for shame, and that in doing so condemned us all, really, because we inherited from our great however many great grandfathers that Adam is, we inherited that sin nature. And now through our sin we walk in that same offense to God until what? But God sent his son. He sent Jesus, and Jesus in that redemption changed everything. And that is where the gospel has power. It has that power. The gospel has power because in the act of the cross and the resurrection of Christ. Now, I want you just to see three things that maybe we miss in the gospel that applies to you personally, that I hope blesses you today. Three things that we can gather from the gospels itself. One is this: it was always God's plan to redeem you. So many times we look at what happened with Adam and Eve and we say, golly, look at what they did. Adam and Eve just going around, they had it perfect, and man, did they botch it. And we look at God looking down saying, I'm going to have to fix their mistake. Man, they messed up. We forget that God knew what they were going to do before they ever did it. That's very important, because that means what? That God carried out his creation. He carried out every thought that has happened since the beginning of time until where you are right now. He carried out creation and went ahead and went forth with it, knowing exactly what was going to happen because he had already had a plan. That's love. He still created me, even though he knew I was going to be born fallen, that I was going to have a sin problem, but also knowing that I would find Christ and walk in that redemption. 1 Peter 1:20 says that God chose Jesus to die before one brick of the foundation of this earth was ever laid. He knew what was going to happen. He had already made a plan, and yet he chose to create you, chose to create me anyway. Secondly, he died when we had nothing to offer. So many times we search and search and search for ways to impress God. What can we do for him? What can we do to make him feel better about who we are? And the fact is, he loves us already. Think about it, if you've ever held a newborn, and I know I've held my newborn sons, all three of them, when they were infants. I held them. I loved them immediately. But what did they have to offer me? I'm going to tell you what they had to offer. They ate, they pooped, and they slept. And about all three of them, they whined all the time about. Yet I still loved them. I would give my life for them. Why? Because it's an unconditional love. That is the unconditional love that God has for you and for me. The Bible says when we were utterly helpless, Christ came at just the right time and died for us sinners. You see, helpless. That means we had nothing to offer. We were in sin, we were lost, and yet he still came. He still died for us. He still loves us. Lastly, Christ's redemption is not dependent upon you and is not dependent upon me. So many times we try to say, oh, well, let me do this for God. Look, he loves you. You're not going to do anything to win his acceptance. Now, should you do things because you love him? Absolutely. But you're not going to do anything that wins his acceptance because you already have it. He loves you right where you are. The Bible says that he died for us while we were still sinners. It also says in John 3:16, what? That for God so loved the world, that he sent his only son. Do you realize that God knew there are those who will reject him, who will not be saved, who will not spend an eternity with him, but he still loved them, and it says he sent Christ for them? There's so many of our lost brothers and sisters out there in the world that don't even realize Jesus has already died for them. He didn't die for you after you became a believer. He died for you while you were still yet a sinner. He died for you when there's nothing you can do. It's not dependent on you. While for us to have, we got to receive it. We got to receive God's gift to be saved, to walk in that eternity with him. But the act of God's love was offered before we even had the choice to make that reception, to receive that grace. That before we ever had a choice to receive his grace, he offered that act of redemption. Guys, love you. I hope this blesses you today. Have an awesome day.